To try and get to the heart of some of the questions I have regarding the Bodhráns' history, I've come to the National Museum of Ireland just outside Castlebar in County Mayo, whose fascinating collection of instruments and objects can help us to understand where the Bodhrán came from. This is incredible. I don't think I've ever seen drums, or are they drums, like this. I mean, they look like Bodhráns. Certainly this one over here. This one has a jingle on it. It's definitely been used as a musical instrument. The museum holds the most significant collection of Old Irish sieves, skin trays and bodhráns. My goodness. The challenge is figuring out which one is which. You can see some of the trays or drums, they're actually so old that they've warped. They're almost kind of look like they've been through the Matrix or something. As exciting as it was to see these objects for the first time, I was curious to find out more. Clodagh Doyle is the keeper of the museum's collection and was kind enough to give me more of an insight into these fascinating items. So here we have all of these incredible objects. I hazard to say bodhrán.
Yes.
I hazard to say skin tray, dollan, dallan, bodhrán, tambourines.
We've got a lot of objects here. So National Museum of Ireland, the Folklife collection has a huge range of these instruments.
Probably the most striking comparison to the bodhrán in the museum's collection are these skin trays. There are plenty of paintings where these are depicted, and the scholar Claudia Kinmouth has documented that these trays were used for holding various domestic objects, particularly balls of wool and even feathers. It's hard to imagine now, though this was a time before plastics and metals were readily available for storing and transporting objects.
Transport of items is a really big deal. So that's why we have so many baskets, so many things that you carry on your shoulders. Even a burden rope would carry a huge bulk of things on. So I suppose carrying things and moving things from place to place, that's why you need a vessel like this. Everything we're looking at was made by human hands. Like it's not, there's nothing in our collections that's really manufactured. The Folklife collection is the lives of folk, so the lives of the people through their object. And there's people in every object. So there's a person behind every object, I suppose. You can see these objects aren't really clean, and nobody cleaned them up and got them ready.
These are flashy brand new bodhráns, are they?
And they're they come in with all that wear, and they come in with all that human contact and connections, and that's what the Folklife collection is. It's the lives of the ordinary people through the objects that they have. This is a winnowing tray that came in 1933, and it was the 10th object that came in 1933. You can see it's got the straw and the band. It's a bit broken there, but they've mended this other part here to make sure that it's still useful. But then everyone mended things. Everything was mended. And if we're going back to reusing and recycle now, they were doing it out of necessity. There was nothing else. You wouldn't waste a piece of leather. And you have to do something with everything. You reuse everything.
It's lovely to see these ancient objects and how they've been reused and repurposed. And it almost feels like today we've come full circle in our attitudes towards recycling. So Clodagh, this one looks like it's been repaired. It's got tape and bits of nails.
Oh, sure. It's everything. It's a lovely one. Again, from 1932. And you can see all these small little nails that are holding the skin onto the wooden band, but it's got the repair definitely here, and obviously it's very important. You've seen something like this before, haven't you?
Yes, I mean this, I have to say, reminds me of Ronan O'Snoddig's bodhrán with the tapes and the nails and the straps and all the contraptions. It's just magnificent.
It's great.
So not to suggest that this is in fact a bodhrán, we don't know yet, but it certainly looks a little like a bodhrán, and you've got that little hoop as well there.
That would have,
potentially been a thumb groove.
Yes, and I think, we've said reuse and repair, but people are using these trays and they're using them for anything and everything. And I think that when we look at our collection, it's all about sustainability, and people are doing that out of sheer need.
Life was difficult in Ireland at the turn of the 20th century, with poverty being widespread across the island. The precursor to this was one of the great tragedies in the story of Ireland, the Great Famine. Between 1845 and 1852, at least 1.5 million died of starvation, disease, or execution by the British who had colonised Ireland since the early 17th century. The famine became a turning point in the story of Ireland. It represented the pinnacle of cruelty and exploitation over the previous 250 years and led to a growing nationalistic movement in Ireland for independence, which culminated in 1922 with the creation of the Irish Free State. So, Clodagh, a lot of these objects come from the end of the 19th century and early 20th century. Now, this was in many ways a very dark period in Irish history. And how does that affect your work here at the National Museum in terms of collecting some of those stories behind the objects?
I think that's definitely tied in with our identity, and Folklife collection really starts at the time when the Irish Folklore Commission is in the 1930s. We're identifying as the new state, our cultural identity, and we want to assert that, and collecting our folklore is very important because the bearers of the tradition are gone. When the folklore collectors went out, they also decided we should get the objects into the museum. So the museum collection starts in earnest.
And thank goodness it did, because it's from this period where we start to see some of the earliest concrete evidence of drumming in Irish music. So this one, I believe, is listed as dating from 1930, which is interesting because this doesn't look like one of the other skin trays on the table. This one very much looks
very
like
much an instrument.
An instrument.
Yes, definitely.
Whether we call it a bodhrán or a tambourine,
yeah.
you know, is to be decided. An early example of a drum being played in Ireland is for the ritual of the wren hunt, traditionally celebrated on St. Stephen's Day, the day after Christmas. It's thought that this ritual is rooted in pre-Christian times, and variations of the tradition exist in Celtic and Norse folklore. The tradition goes where wren boys gather to dress up, sing, dance, drum, and tell jokes whilst mumming, the practice of going from house to house to entertain in exchange for some snacks or a penny. We have these wonderful photographs and even a short video of the drum being played in a way that is stylistically relevant from 1946 by Cuiphán O'Danaher. Looking at this table, Clodagh, we see this drum here, which listed as being from 1930, looking very much like a tambourine. And then you look at some of the more tray-like skin trays. I mean, would it be possible that for the wren hunt, these skin trays would have been drawn down and used as a drum, and that as its own kind of culture, as its own phenomena, in parallel to the tambourine being something much more likely to have been imported?
With all of these traditions of going from house to house, it usually falls on the younger kids, and you're not going to give the best things out to them. Like, I think you probably would pick up a kind of a tray that is made out of leather and say you can bang away at that, like when you're going down the road, as opposed to like a tin can or, you know, something like that. Anything to make some sort of noise and a din, you know.
Of course, this is speculation given the small amount of documented evidence on any of these age-old practices. Moreover, there's a sense of mystery about many of the items submitted to the museum's collection.
When you take in an object, you take that folk connection and what they said. Now, it mightn't be exactly, but that's the way they were talking about it. And having looked through the school's collection, the time that people used the word bodhrán, it wasn't really as a musical instrument at all. It was always about bower and deafness. A lot of people just associated the bodhrán as a word for someone who was deaf, or a winnowing tray. When we look at all the objects in our collection, and if you open the presses there, you'll definitely see a lot of the connections between the winnowing tray and also sieves. And so sieves and bodhráns seem to be in the same place in agriculture. And then we have very obvious ones that have come in as musical instruments, and they're in our music collection where they've come in. People have said, we use this to play music.
So you're telling me you have more
instruments
and objects?
Yes,
Maybe
we have.
We could go and have a look at those. Would that be all right?
That would be amazing. Yeah,
fantastic.
No problem.
Let's do
no
it.
problem. So come on in.
Oh my gosh. Clodagh, there's so many cupboards. How do you know where everything is kept?
We have a very good registration service in the museum, and we've documentation. But every press has a number, every shelf has a number, and every object has a number. And then we've an amazing, a very complicated computerized system that actually connects all those things up. So if you're looking for something. So you know how we were looking at the other objects, but it's amazing because this is the press that they would have came from. This one is also very beautiful.
Wow.
A corn sieve made like the bodhrán of sheep or goat skin, stretched on a wooden hoop and pierced with holes by means of a hot metal point, used for sieving corn to clean it from weeds, seeds and dirt. It's from Derryconnor, County Donegal, 1950. It came into the museum, and it shows that's mending and repair, and you can see how it's just really beautiful.
And Claudia, you can really see, like, looking at some of these sieves and these objects, you can see why people have made a connection between the bodhrán as a musical instrument and these sieves. Now, of course, the history we're going to get into a little bit later, but I mean, you can see why people made the connection between the two.
Definitely, I suppose. And also, I think, you know, whether or not these objects come in and what they're called is usually what they've been described by the donor or the person who made it or the person whose home it came from. They're saying this was a sieve for corn. So this we know was a corn sieve made like the bodhrán, you know. So so that's what it said, and that's what they said in 1950.
So Claudia, these are absolutely magnificent, but do you have even more?
We do. We have more, and you know, this is the section that's associated more with the agriculture section, but we have more in the music section. So I'll bring you to the music, ones that have come in and are known to be bodhráns. Like,
Awesome.
you know.
Sounds good. To take me through the next round of objects to inspect, I met with Fintan Vallely, a hugely respected and award-winning musician, writer and researcher on traditional Irish music. He has a special interest in the bodhrán, having conducted extensive research on the drum's origin, particularly the instruments and objects in the National Museum's collection.
I heard about the collection here, and I came down here in 2008, and I photographed and measured up, like a phrenologist, all the sieves, riddles, drums that they had here. I catalogued them all at the time, but the conclusion I drew at the end was that all the bodhráns, they're just that's old primitive subsistence technology. But the tambourines, all the tambourines are made out of something else, out of redundant sieves or bits of other circular wood like wool wheels. So the conclusion I came to was that we were copying the tambourine in the later 1800s. This is the original bodhrán, which was a household implement. This is a household tray. This would be used for putting spuds out on the table, for putting, bringing in turf from the stack, as Patrick Kennedy wrote about in the 1830s, or bringing corn out to feed the horse. It was like a measure of corn as well. That's the bodhrán. From the beginning of the 1800s, these were being improvised on for mumming before the rain, as far as I can figure out. And there were kids would bang on them, because I mean the skin is only tucked into the sides here. There's no nails involved in this thing at all. You tuck the skin over the edge, and when it dries, it creates the tension. And you can see the tension in that there.
And how do we know that that was happening in the 1800s?
Because I'm working on a book on it at the moment. It's called Beating Time. But I've dug all these references out from folklore accounts and from press clippings and from some stuff in literature, but most of this stuff has never ever been written down before or even talked about before. So these are things just I uncovered and discovered to my own shock, because I started off wanting to prove something entirely different. There are descriptions, very few, I think maybe two, of kids banging on these to improvise the drum. But what they were doing, they were copying the tambourine. You see, the tambourine was brought into Ireland from the middle 1700s onwards as a commercial shop item. And they were being sold in all the music shops and through the music trade. So people obviously began, well, we're not going to buy one of those. They would save up to buy accordions and fiddles and things, but they wouldn't save up to buy a tambourine. So they copied them and began making their own tambourines. So, but this one here is this is an actual, you know, a tambourine copy. So people made themselves. At a certain point, the old bodhrán, for the household bodhrán, the tray, the winnower, had gone out of fashion, had gone out of style, because people were getting more prosperous after the famine. A lot of these things were just dumped, that were lost, that were forgotten about. A bodhrán is a tambourine without jingles, but it's got the name of the old household implement on this object. But it's not an evolution as such. It's just that we took the name from the old object, we took the Italian tambourine and we turned that into an instrument, and we called it the bodhrán. So the bodhrán is a new instrument.
And this one is a bit of an anomaly, because this one is listed, Fintan, as being from 1820. Set it straight for me.
Well, I don't think it may be possible, but I'm not a judge of wood, but I just judged from this here that this was made out of something else in the collection here. They're all made out of something else, all of them. I think this was made from an old wool wheel, and it could be the date 1820. I doubt it very much. 1820, that's a long, long, long way back.
Do we need to get some carbon dating on this?
I don't know how you date things like this, but like, you know, maybe the original wood might be from that. It's doubtful. But even if this drum is from 1820, if the frame is from 1820, the skin certainly isn't, because it wouldn't have lasted that long.
So the court is out on 1820 for this drum. It's unlikely. Looking at it, observation based on your expertise, it's unlikely. But in the middle of the 19th century, 1833, Daniel McLeish, an artist from Cork, Anglo-Irish artist from Cork, and he painted Snap Apple Night. In this painting, we see a person playing a tambourine, an instrument, a bodhrán.
It's a tambourine.
It's a tambourine.
It is. It's a tambourine with jingles, and they're very, very distinctive. In fact, I got James O'Kane, the bodhrán maker, to make an exact copy of that. I got a high-resolution print of that painting, and James made one exactly the same. The question is, maybe Daniel McLeish glamorized his painting, but he was painting, that painting went on display the following year, and he got a good price for it. So all European painters, they were all painting tambourine players. So it may be that McLeish put a tambourine in the wee fella's hands. He may well have had a household bodhrán in his hands. McLeish, not wanting to let the side down, may have painted it with the tambourine. It is possible that the local big house had a tambourine and they loaned it to this young fella. But I think the way big upstairs, downstairs worked in those days is highly unlikely. That painting has been cited and quoted by a lot of people. The thing is, very few people have ever seen that painting. It's in private hands. I've seen it now, but we're all sworn to secrecy as to where it is. Grand, that's okay. People are precious about things that are worth a lot of money, I suppose.
So another painting from the middle of the 19th century, Shibeen in Listowel.
Yeah.
What do we know about this, if anything?
That is a picture of big house people. Maybe there was a party or a play. They're slumming it in the local Shibeen. Otherwise, why would the gentry be in a pub? That may not be the case. But I think it probably is the case. It's an amateur painter, Bridget Fitzgerald, who did that. Amateur painters tended to paint things as they were. Professional painters could construct their own realities all the time. That's why Daniel McLeish may well have been liberal with his tambourine depiction. But in that one of them is playing the flute, the other is playing a tambourine. Now they have some kind of costume on them. Who knows? Was it fancy dress? Were they military? And Nicholas Carlin's pointed out that the wee fella playing the tambourine looks very young, it's a boy. But it could be a father and a son. It could be buskers, they could be travelling musicians. But I don't know how prevalent travelling musicians going around, would they have played in pubs? I don't know.
And we don't know where this painting is either.
No, it's somewhere in Ireland. Somebody has it, and it's probably not of any great value, because it's not a high-class watercolour or anything, but it's amazing in the detail. But hanging on the wall in that painting, there is a bodhrán, an actual one of these bodhráns hanging up above the fireplace in that painting. So, but the wee boy is playing a tambourine. Again, I've heard that described as a bodhrán with jingles. It's not, he's playing a tambourine.
So picking it up there, the middle of the 19th century, leading us on to the end of the 19th century, we have the famine in Ireland, which is obviously devastating on so many levels. We have mass emigration. Taking us into the 20th century, we have the first recording listed as the tambourine, 1928, Finton. Am I right? Or am I wrong?
No, that's correct. That's the first recording.
Now, I managed to get my hands on this very rare recording featuring John Reynolds playing the tambourine and Tom Morrison on the flute. Now, this recording was made in New York City, and it just tells us really, how important the diaspora was in terms of the development of traditional Irish music and the bodhrán. Now, was this listed as a tambourine on the old record? To me, as I'm listening to it, it sounds very much like what we would today call a bodhrán, and certainly to my ear, it sounds like the tambourine is being played with a stick too.
Jingles in the background of that recording, and it's listed as Irish flute and tambourine. And there are about 5 recordings altogether, and they all say tambourine. They all call it tambourine.
But the performance practice of this recording, from what we can hear, it sounds like it's being played like a bodhrán, as we would sort of.
Well, it's a tambourine, but like the tambourine and the bar, they're both vertical drums, so you have to play them either with your finger. The tambourine was always played with the hand. And that was the old way of playing in Kerry up until the 1960s. And it's also the way of playing in Sligo, up in Connacht, up until and Mayo, North Mayo, up until the 1960s as well. So, but you can also play with a stick, which is a fashion probably came from drumsticks. And like there's a reference to Connie Meath to somebody playing it with a stick, I think back in the later 1800s. So it's a stick would be a fairly logical thing, but it's people in West Limerick say that it started there. People in North Kerry say it started there. But either way, it's something which came in later. But it was always played with a hand, and all those old makers, they all played it with their hand. Even the picture of Charlie Byrne, the famous maker, you see him standing there playing it with his hand as well. So.
And to this day, Christy Moore always
still,
It's still very much part of the performance practice.
Well, people regarded that as being the authentic way of playing the tambourine, or later the bodhrán, but it was the tambourine in those days.
And it's worth saying as well, we have instruments not dissimilar to this one, that mosaics of these that have dated back to Pompeii, 79 AD, I think Pompeii erupted. We have drums very similar to this, Southern Italian tamora from Campania.
That's right, yeah.
The tamuriata, drums just like this. So this in essence, you know, this drum, there's really hard evidence of this going way back 2,000 years. And there is no shortage of tambourines in various shapes and sizes subsequently appearing throughout the centuries in European visual arts. So to me it seems like the most likely evolution is that we had skin trays in Ireland called bodhráns, or at least sometimes called bodhráns, and musical instruments called tambourines, which existed separately and were probably imported. To my ear at least, it sounds from that first recording in 1927 that there is a definite playing style to the Irish tambourine, which our contemporary bodhrán sound is derived from. And the transference of the name from tambourine to bodhrán is clearly accredited to Sean O'Riada, composer and musicologist, who we'll explore in the next episode of this series. You can check that out by clicking right over here, and also make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more documentaries and tutorials all in and around music.